Now we are studying the chapter on the impermanence of life, which consists of 7 meditations. Today, we will cover the third one. The impermanence of holy beings. In the present good Kalpa, Phaipusshin, Shikin, and 5 other Buddhas have already appeared, each with his own circle of Shravakas and Arhats in inconceivable number. Each benefited countless sentient beings through the teachings of the 3 vehicles. However, now only the Buddha Shakyamuni's teaching remains. Apart from this, all other Buddhas have passed into nirvana, and all the pure Dharma teachings they gave have gradually disappeared. Take Buddha Shikin, for example. We know how to chant this Buddha's name, but there is no longer a written record of how he turned the Dharma Wheel. Now we only have the canon of Buddha Shakyamuni, the Tripitaka. Unfortunately, the canons of other Buddhas are not available to us, except for a very few verses spoken by the past Buddhas that have been preserved in some Buddhist scriptures. Apart from that, we have never encountered their teachings. These days, we only have the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni as recorded in sutras such as Vinaya and Agama. According to the sutras, especially during the fruit period, 500 arhats and innumerable other holy beings appeared. One by one, the numerous great Shravakas of the present dispensation, each with an entourage of 500 arhats, have successively passed beyond suffering into nirvana without remainder. For example, Mahapajapati Gautami, the foster mother and maternal aunt of Buddha Shakyamuni, who later became the first bhikkhuni, once saw the Buddha sneeze and prayed, "Long live the Buddha." The Buddha responded, "You shouldn't have said this. You should wish for the Dharma to live long. If the Buddha were to always remain in this world, beings who cling to the idea of permanence would not develop renunciation and aversion towards their mundane life." Upon hearing the Buddha's words, Mahapajapati Gautami entered parinirvana with 500 bhikkhunis as a form of repentance. When I gave you the teaching on the history of Buddhism, I mentioned that if an ordinary person initiates an untimely death, it is considered suicide, but this is not the case for an arhat. Since Mahapajapati Gautami and the bhikkhunis were arhats who had attained the state beyond birth and death, they could enter parinirvana at will. With this dependent arising, a few years later, Buddha Shakyamuni entered Mahaparinirvana. Some outward manifestations of Mahapajapati Gautami did not seem to carry favorable dependent arising. Initially, her ordination as a nun appeared unfavorable for the duration of the Dharma in this world, and in the end, her parinirvana appeared unfavorable as well. One day after Mahapajapati Gautami's parinirvana, Maudgalyana and Sariputra, the Buddha's 2 chief disciples, visited the realms of hell and pretas and witnessed the suffering of a Tirthaka teacher. The teacher asked the 2 noble monks to tell his disciples to abandon his religion and instead follow the doctrine of Buddha Shakyamuni when they returned to the human realm. When they returned, Sariputra first forwarded the message to the Tirthakas, who did not hear it due to their lack of karmic connection with Sariputra in previous lives. Then Maudgalyana delivered the message again. Upon hearing it, the Tirthakas became furious and beat Maudgalyana nearly to death. Sariputra then wrapped Maudgalyana's body in his monastic robe and carried him to Jedavana, moaning, "I didn't even want to hear about the death of my good friend Maudgalyana, let alone witness it with my own eyes." Subsequently, Sariputra and 80,000 arhats passed into parinirvana, and soon Maudgalyana also entered parinirvana with another 70,000 arhats. Later, Buddha Shakyamuni entered parinirvana. Some accounts state that 80,000 arhats entered parinirvana following the Buddha. According to Sutrayana teachings, at this time the Buddha and his sublime retinue gradually disappeared from this world, and the Buddha's doctrine was like the smoke after an extinguished fire, in the sense that no one was imparting the teachings. This situation was ridiculed by celestial beings. Eventually, the compilation of the Tripitaka gradually began. Therefore, no one can escape the rule of impermanence. The Buddha had attained full enlightenment and eradicated all obscurations, yet he still manifested parinirvana. Even noble beings such as Maudgalyana, the foremost master of clairvoyance, and Sariputra, the foremost master of wisdom, could not avoid impermanence, let alone we ordinary people who are as fragile as ants. The great Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche wrote in the Song of Impermanence, the melody of waterfall, although the Buddhas, who have attained perfect freedom and realization, and the sublime beings had appeared in this world like stars in the sky, they passed into parinirvana for the purpose of revealing impermanence. Reflecting on this, we will understand deeply that everything is impermanent. In this Saha world, there have appeared as many Buddhas who have attained perfect freedom and realization, as well as bodhisattvas and other sublime beings, as there are stars in a night sky. However, to demonstrate the rule of impermanence to beings who cling to permanence, they cast into parinirvana one by one. If we carefully ponder the meaning of this, we will come to understand that everything is impermanent, which cannot be changed by anyone. In particular, when visiting India and witnessing the numerous sacred Buddhist sites, one may experience a profound sense of sorrow. The great treatise on the perfection of wisdom says, "The world-honored one has 10 powers and radiant light. He attained luminous and boundless wisdom and can liberate all sentient beings. Now everything is in the void, and where can we find him?" Thinking of this, is there any wise person who is not saddened? The Buddha taught about impermanence throughout his turning of the Dharma Wheel, from start to finish. As mentioned in Kadampa's instructions, when the Buddha turned the first Dharma Wheel and taught the Four Noble Truths at Sarnath, he first taught dukkha, the transitory, impermanent, and ever-changing nature of everything. When the Buddha completed the third turning of the Dharma Wheel and was about to enter parinirvana, he taught the Nirvana Sutra and then said, "Bhikkhus, everything arises dependent on particular conditions." Then the Buddha loosened the upper part of his robe, allowing his disciples to see his Tathagata's body, and said, "The birth of a Tathagata is like the bloom of the Udambara flower. You should always contemplate that all conditioned things are impermanent." After saying this, the Buddha proceeded to a grove of sala trees. Between two mighty trees, he lay down on his right side in the lion posture, with his head facing north, and passed into parinirvana. The Agama Sutra also says that shortly before the Buddha passed into parinirvana, he spoke to his disciples, "Bhikkhus, in this world, there is nothing that can be relied upon. You should renounce worldly pursuits and seek tranquility and nirvana, where there is no birth, aging, sickness, or death, and where there is no attachment or separation. You should always contemplate the truth of impermanence." Therefore, the Buddha's last words urged us to always remember the truth of impermanence, which carries the most profound meaning in the Buddha's teachings. This is why many past and present eminent masters have emphasized the importance of practicing impermanence. Regardless of whether you are a monastic or a lay practitioner, you should strive to cultivate a constant awareness of impermanence. Of course, it is not enough for awareness to simply arise. You should also prepare for your next lives through diligent practice. By doing so, your practice can be successful, without having cultivated conviction in impermanence. Even if you pursue higher teachings, you may not attain any actual realization from your Dharma practice. No one, whether a holy being or an ordinary person, can escape impermanence. Without exception, everyone will eventually be consumed by impermanence. Of course, a holy being's death is merely a manifestation. It is said that when a past Buddha was about to enter parinirvana, he left a verse, "All conditioned things are ephemeral like clouds. The wise shouldn't believe them. When the Vajra of impermanence arrives, it will dismantle the noble Lord and the King of Mountains. Of course, when referring to the Buddha passing into parinirvana, we cannot say the Buddha passed away or died. When giving relevant teachings, some Dharma teachers' wording has been inappropriate. Some said the Buddha passed away at the age of 80, as if describing an ordinary old man. Others said the Buddha died at the age of 80 when he was old and weak, truly pitiful. Depicting the Buddha in this way is not appropriate. As you should know, the Buddha has a Vajra body that is beyond birth and death, and his apparent entry into parinirvana was simply a way of reminding sentient beings about the truth of impermanence and motivating them to practice Dharma diligently. Some scholars have not used appropriate wording to describe the Buddha in their research papers. They regard Buddha Shakyamuni simply as a prince who left the world at 80 years old. In their depictions, the Buddha seems not much different from Confucius or Mencius, except that he was wiser and provided more teachings. This is a significant misunderstanding. We Buddhists must understand who the Buddha was in the accounts of Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana, respectively. By doing so, we can gain a comprehensive understanding of the Buddha. This also explains why I decided to translate The White Lotus, Great Biography of Buddha Shakyamuni. I hope you can grasp the whole picture of the Buddha and come to know his great aspirations and deeds over his countless lifetimes. Otherwise, many of you may think like those who only treat the Buddha as an ordinary person and consider his parinirvana no different from an old man dying. This perspective is simply incorrect. In the Mahayana Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha said, "O noble man, the body of the Tathagata is the eternal body, the indestructible body, the Vajra body, the body not sustained by various food. It is the Dharma body." That the Buddha passed into parinirvana in front of others was just his manifestation. In fact, the real Buddha is the Dharmakaya. Therefore, we should understand the Buddha from multiple perspectives. There are not many people who know and understand Buddhism. Therefore, as Buddhists, we must study historical accounts to gain a comprehensive understanding of the Buddha and the Dharma. For example, to understand Tibetan Buddhism, one must be familiar with the lineage history of each major school in the Tibetan region. To understand Chinese Buddhism, one should know the Dharma activities and life stories of the lineage masters in each school, such as the Pure Land School and the Chan School. However, in the current degenerate age, many people know nothing about Tibetan Buddhism, and they carelessly defame it. Some individuals are completely ignorant of Buddhism as a whole, yet they fabricate incorrect views and slander Buddhist views and practices. How unwise. We have just discussed the impermanence of the Buddha and his retinue. In India, there once lived 500 arhats who mastered all attributes of the paths, levels, clairvoyance, and miraculous powers, and compiled the teachings of the Buddha. Historical accounts, such as Taranatha's History of Buddhism in India, record the activities of arhats who had mastered all attributes of the paths, levels, and clairvoyance, and who compiled the Buddha's teachings. These arhats compiled the Buddha's teachings 3 times, known as the 3 Buddhist councils. In general, the first compilation of Shastra is the Abhidharma Mahavibhasha Sastra, which, according to Sutrayana, was compiled by many arhats. The first compilation of sutra, according to many historians, is the Astasahasraka Prajnaparamita Sutra, or Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, in 8,000 lines, which first appeared in the palace of Chandraraksita, who became king shortly after the time of King Mahapadma. A tantric version of this sutra is believed to be the summation of the real. In the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, its fundamentals and history, Dudjom Rinpoche wrote, It is said that this transcendent wisdom in 8,000 verses was the first appearance of the greater vehicle in the human world after the teacher's nirvana. This must be held to have occurred before the Third Council. Therefore, the position universally adhered to by most contemporary scholars, namely that all the transmitted precepts were committed to writing during the Third Council, must be erroneous, for it is contradicted by this report. There is a tradition in my hometown, which may or may not be similar elsewhere, for each household of lay practitioners to obtain a copy of the Transcendent Wisdom in 8,000 verses. I asked some seniors why this was the case, but they didn't know, simply saying it was a tradition. During the Cultural Revolution, Buddhism basically disappeared from every household, but when the state religious policy began to loosen up, the sutra became available for purchase again, and it was said that copies sold out rather quickly. When a Tibetan starts a new family, they would first obtain a copy of this sutra for their new household. In addition to the arhats who participated in the 3 Buddhist councils, there were the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme ones, the 80 siddhas, and many others. Who were the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme ones? In the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, the 3 founding authors of fundamental texts were Nagarjuna, the second Buddha, who is widely considered the founder of the Madhyamaka, the middle way school of Buddhist philosophy, Asanga, the founder of the Yogacara school, and Master Dignaga, who had a direct vision of Manjushri and is the founder of Buddhist logic. Their 3 commentators were Aryadeva, the commentator on Nagarjuna's work, who was born miraculously from a lotus; Vasubandhu, the commentator on Asanga's work, who could recite 990,000 verses; and Dharmakirti, the commentator on Dignaga's work, who attained freedom and ease and had a direct vision of Manjushri. Usually, Nagarjuna and Asanga are esteemed as the 2 supreme ones, while the 6 ornaments consist of the remaining 4, along with Gunaprabha and Sakyaprabha, the author and the commentator on Vinaya. Some historical accounts consider Gunaprabha and Sakyaprabha to be the 2 supreme ones, with the remaining 6 masters comprising the 6 ornaments. These 8 great masters who propagated the Buddha's teachings in the human realm are highly revered in Mahayana Buddhism and are referred to as the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme ones. Additionally, Chandragaman and Shantideva are celebrated as the 2 marvelous masters. In addition, there were the 80 siddhas in India, including Sarahapa, Virupa, Lawapa, and others. The life stories of these siddhas, sometimes referred to as Mahasiddhas, meaning great perfect ones, can be found in books such as Taranatha's historical work on the lives of Tantric Mahasiddhas and the legends of the 84 Mahasiddhas. The great Mahasiddha Lawapa, also known as Sri Prabhat, Glorious Light, or Kambala, Yogin of the Black Blanket, because Lawapa was always dressed in the black blanket that was his only covering, often manifested miraculous signs in public. Once, Mara girls cast a rain of stones at Lawapa, who immediately entered the generation stage and established a guardian boundary, a protective circle created through visualization, so that the stones fell elsewhere and did not harm him. Lawapa then thought, if the generation stage is this powerful, then the completion stage may be even more powerful. So, he began practicing the perfection stage, and the falling stones suddenly stopped in midair. It is said that today those stones are still suspended in the air. On another occasion, Lawapa went to sleep for 12 years right at the door of the royal palace. Anyone passing by who didn't prostrate before him would have stiffened legs and wouldn't be able to walk. Therefore, everyone, including the king, had to prostrate when passing by. Later, when Lawapa was practicing tantric extraordinary activities at a charnel ground, 500 Mara girls from the country of Audiana searched for him, intending to create obstacles. When the Mara girls arrived at the cemetery, they found no one, only the black blanket left by Lawapa. After a discussion, the Mara girls began to tear the blanket into 500 pieces, each swallowing one piece. Then Lawapa suddenly appeared and cast a spell, turning the Mara girls into 500 sheep. The flock of sheep ran up to the king and all said, "We were witches before. The monk who is the lord of the charnel ground has done this to us. Please subjugate him and release us, your majesty." The king then came to the charnel ground and petitioned Lawapa, who stood up naked because his only covering had been eaten. Lawapa told the king, "Your majesty's witches have eaten my blanket. I am going to summon those witches." Through his summons, all but 3 Mara girls came to Lawapa. Lawapa pointed his index finger at each of them menacingly and transformed them into creatures with various types of heads. He ordered them to vomit up the piece of the blanket they had eaten. The pieces were then sewn together, but 3 parts were missing. Lawapa knew the 3 Mara girls were living in the king's harem, so the king sent someone to bring them to Lawapa. They were duly summoned and vomited up the pieces, just like the others. The blanket was then completely restored, and Lawapa wrapped it around his body. Even these great Mahasiddhas could not escape impermanence, and eventually they all appeared to enter parinirvana. None of them are still alive today, and only their life stories remain in this world. Here too in Tibet, the land of snows, when the second Buddha of Audhyana, Padmasambhava, turned the wheel of Dharma to ripen and liberate sentient beings, there lived all his followers, like the 25 great accomplished masters of the king and ministers and the 80 siddhas of Yerpa, and hundreds of thousands of other followers who are not in the literal accounts. Someone may wonder, how is Padmasambhava the second Buddha? How can there be 2 Buddhas? Well, Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu are also esteemed as the second Buddha, and Master Zhiyi, the founder of the Tiantai tradition of Chinese Buddhism, is referred to as Junior Shakyamuni. If a master is called Junior Shakyamuni, it is reasonable to refer to other masters as the second Buddha. If you understand what Padmasambhava did for Buddhism and his extraordinary power during the degenerate age, you will definitely develop faith in him. It is because of the blessings of Padmasambhava that Tibetan Buddhism remains intact and flourishing, despite the turmoil of the 5 turbidities. Later emerged the ancient tradition, Nyingma, masters of the So, Zur, and Nub clans, Marpa, Milarepa, and Dagpo of the new traditions, and other learned and accomplished beings. The life stories of masters of the So, Zur, and Nub can be found in the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, its fundamentals and history, though many people may not know their stories yet. This year, I hope to finish translating this history book, and I encourage each of you to read it. Doing so will enhance your understanding of the history of Tibetan Buddhism. Why are many people familiar with the life stories of Jetsun Milarepa? In the 1960s, Chenji Zhang translated the life of Milarepa into Chinese, which helped to popularize his story. In contrast, Nubchen Sangye Yeshe, one of the masters of So, Zur, and Nub, remains largely unknown. Therefore, I believe it is crucial to understand these historical figures. By recognizing the great achievements of these eminent masters, you can avoid harboring doubts or misconceptions about them. Most of them attained realization and could freely command the 4 elements. They demonstrated extraordinary miracles, such as turning the tangible into the intangible and vice versa. Fire could not burn them, water could not drown them, earth could not bury them, and they remained unharmed in perilous situations, completely beyond the limitations of the 4 elements. Once, for example, Jetsun Milarepa was meditating in silence in Nyeshangkacha Cave in Nepal. A group of hunters arrived and asked, "Are you a human or a ghost?" Milarepa remained silent, gazing into the void. The hunters then began shooting a barrage of poisoned arrows at him, but none hit their mark. They proceeded to drag him into the water and throw him off a cliff, yet he leaped back effortlessly and returned to his original seat. Finally, they piled wood on him and set it on fire, but the flames refused to ignite. There have been many beings who attained such powers, but in the end, they all chose to demonstrate that everything is impermanent, leaving behind only their stories. Therefore, we should contemplate this carefully and generate a conviction about impermanence. Potoa used to have more than 2,000 disciples, of whom 500, through the practice of impermanence, developed aversion and disenchantment toward worldly life and attained the sign of achievement. How many of us truly perceive that everything is impermanent? We first learned about the impermanence of the outer universe in which beings reside, as well as the impermanence of beings living in the universe. Here, we also learned about the impermanence of holy beings, particularly of the great Mahasiddhas, who achieved high levels of accomplishment and mastery over the four elements, yet could not live forever, let alone ordinary beings like us. In fact, we can easily sense impermanence when examining historical accounts. For example, after reading the life stories of eminent masters in India and Tibet, we gain insights into impermanence. We might reflect, everything is indeed impermanent. So many great achieved masters have appeared in this world, and their miraculous powers and levels of realization were beyond our imagination, yet none of them remain with us now. The same applies to the masters of Chinese Buddhism. Take the Pure Land School, for instance. From the first patriarch, Huiyuan, 334 to 416, to the 13th patriarch, Yingguang, 1861 to 1940, all the lineage masters have passed into parinirvana. All that remains now are their teachings and stories. Similarly, the lineage masters of the Vinaya school, from the first patriarch Daoshuan, 596 to 667, of the Tang dynasty, to the 11th patriarch Hongyi, 1880 to 1942, have also departed. As for the Huayan school, the Buddhist teachings it primarily follows were initially transmitted from the Indian master Asvagasa to Nagarjuna and later to its first patriarch Dushun, 557 to 640, who founded the school in China. From there, the teachings were passed on to the 6 successive patriarchs. Now, these 7 patriarchs exist only in history books. The Chan school of Chinese Buddhism, which continues to thrive today, is no exception. Bodhidharma, the 28th Indian patriarch, in a direct line of transmission from the Buddha, came to China to propagate the teachings and establish the Chan school in China. The traditional list of Chan patriarchs extends until Huining, 638 to 713, the 6th patriarch. Subsequently, as Bodhidharma prophesied, the Chan school continued through mind transmissions without the transmission of the robe and bowl, resulting in no 7th patriarch. The Chan school was further developed into the 5 houses of Chan, the Guiyang, Yunmen, Faiyan, Caodong, and Linji lines, whose Dharma lineage is still being passed on. Nevertheless, all the lineage masters have passed into parinirvana. In fact, many eminent masters of Chinese Buddhism are embodiments of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. For instance, Master Dushun, whom I just mentioned, as the founder of the Huayan school, demonstrated many miraculous manifestations in his life, and was regarded as the embodiment of Manjushri. How did people recognize him as the embodiment of Manjushri? Dushun upheld high moral standards and did not pursue worldly endeavors. Each day, he farmed the land and returned to his temple at night to recite the Flower Garland Sutra. I truly admire such dedication. It may seem ordinary and unremarkable on the surface, but it is in fact immensely beneficial to one's practice. A practitioner should remain consistent and adhere to a single practice routine. Otherwise, the mind may wander aimlessly. For example, today you encounter a guru and ask him, "Dear Guru, you are truly like a wish-fulfilling jewel. Do you have any guidance for me? I am eager to learn from you." The guru imparts teachings, but after some time, your enthusiasm wanes and you seek out another guru. In this way, throughout your life, you first pursue a guru who is an embodiment of Manjushri, then another guru who is an embodiment of Avalokiteshvara, and later a third guru who is an embodiment of Mahastama Prapta. You are always busy searching for yet another new guru, and as a result, you become completely lost and forget what you've learned and how much you've forgotten. This is unwise. From the day you develop faith in your guru and the teachings with which you have karmic connections, it is essential to maintain unwavering devotion until the end of your life. You should regard the guru and the teachings as your refuge and support throughout your life. This is very important. Speaking of Dushan, he had a disciple who followed him to study Dharma for over 10 years. This disciple had great faith in him at the beginning, but gradually his faith waned. The disciple noticed that his master spent the days farming the land and recited the Flower Garland Sutra at night. Nothing extraordinary. Feeling he could learn nothing from Dushan, the disciple decided to go on pilgrimage to Mount Wutai and pray to Manjushri for wisdom. He asked his master for his opinion, and Dushan said, "You don't have to go. Practicing here is the same as going to Mount Wutai for Manjushri." The disciple didn't understand what his master really meant, so he pleaded, "Dear master, I long to go on pilgrimage to Mount Wutai. Please be compassionate and grant me permission." Seeing that his disciple was very determined, Dushan agreed. Before the disciple's departure, Dushan gave him 2 letters, one for Lady Ching and the other for Old Mother Pig, asking him to deliver them. The disciple took the letters and set out immediately. During his journey, he inquired about the address and found Lady Ching. To his surprise, he discovered that Lady Ching was a prostitute. He thought, "Why does my master have a friend who is a prostitute?" However, the envelope was clearly addressed to her, so he delivered the letter. The prostitute opened and read the letter, then said, "I understand. My work is done. It's time to go." She then sat down and died. Puzzled, the disciple picked up the letter, which read, "Avalokiteshvara, my work is done and I'm about to leave. Please go with me." So in reality, Lady Ching was the embodiment of Avalokiteshvara. Yet the disciple still did not realize that his master was extraordinary. He continued his journey and found Old Mother Pig, following the address on the second letter. The recipient was indeed a pig. Old Mother Pig received the letter, opened it with her nose, read it, and died immediately as well. Once again puzzled, the disciple looked at the letter, which said, "Samantabhadra, my work is done and I'm about to leave. Please go with me." But the dim-witted disciple still didn't grasp the underlying meaning. Later, he arrived at the foot of Mount Wutai and met an old man who asked him, "What are you doing here?" The disciple replied, "I came here for Manjushri." The old man said, "Your master is Manjushri. You do not venerate your master, yet you travel from afar to venerate Manjushri. How foolish." Then the old man disappeared. At last, the disciple understood. He turned around and rushed back to see his master. But when he returned to the temple, he found that his master Dushan had passed into parinirvana. As you can see, Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, and Samantabhadra adopt different forms to liberate and guide beings. The emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are truly remarkable. They can manifest as animals, prostitutes, or eminent masters. However, Many people remain unaware of this. Venerable Longchen also said, "While I am still alive, you may not generate faith in me, and my teachings may not thrive." Indeed, a great master is often unrecognized during his lifetime, and his disciples may remain unaware of their teacher's remarkable qualities. Once the master departs from this world, however, the disciples begin to appreciate the greatness of their teacher, yet they can never see him again and are left with feelings of remorse. Not only will the emanation of Manjushri pass into parinirvana, but the emanation of Amitabha cannot escape impermanence either. Chan Master Yongming Yansho is regarded as an emanation of Amitabha. Based on this story, Master Yongming Yansho was deeply respected by the king of Wei and esteemed as the royal teacher of the kingdom. One day, the king made meal offerings to 1,000 monks. All monks were treated equally, allowing everyone come to partake in the offering. Although the offerings were made on equal terms, the tables were arranged in a manner that still distinguished higher and lower seats. Nobody dared to sit in the top seat. Since Master Yongming Yansho was the royal teacher, he was invited to take the top seat. Master Yongming Yansho, however, was very humble and declined the invitation. While others were still urging him to take the seat, a monk dressed in a ragged robe with large ears approached, directly went to the top seat and sat down. Seeing this, the king felt a bit awkward and was at a loss for what to do. The royal teacher didn't take the top seat, he thought, but a monk I didn't know did. Nevertheless, the king remained silent, since it was a meal offering for all the monks. After the meal offering concluded, everyone departed. The king asked Master Yongming Yansho, "Was there any noble being who came to receive the meal offering today?" Master Yongming Yansho replied, "Yes, Buddha Dipankara came today." The king asked, "Which one was that?" Master Yongming Yansho said, "The monk with big ears who sat in the top seat." Hearing this, the king was very happy and immediately sent his men to find Dipankara. They searched everywhere and finally found the monk in a mountain cave. They prostrated before him and invited him back to the palace. The monk with big ears said, "Amitabha talked too much." Then he passed into parinirvana. The men sent by the king were in great awe and didn't know what to do. They reflected on the monk's words and realized that Master Yongming Yansho was Amitabha. So they hurried back to tell the king, "Buddha Dipankara has gone, but Amitabha is still here." The king was overjoyed and went to see Master Yongming Yansho right away. When he was almost at the door of the master's room, a person rushed out in a flurry and nearly bumped into the king. The king asked, "Why are you in such a hurry?" The person responded, "Master Yongming Yansho has passed into parinirvana." When an emanation of a Buddha or a bodhisattva passes into parinirvana, many other eminent masters will follow and pass into parinirvana as well. There are many such stories throughout history. From the above analysis, we learn that many eminent masters from India, Tibet, and China have come to this world, but they have all eventually passed into parinirvana. Only their life stories remain, and some of them have no life story left today. In particular, many Tertons, treasure revealers, appeared in the Tibetan region to benefit countless beings, and their life stories are remarkable. As Padmasambhava said, "The Tertons who appeared in various places are all my monuments." Even in small counties like Surtar and Lhuo, there appeared some Tertons who revealed many termas but who were not addressed in historical accounts. Bujom Rinpoche's The Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism didn't include any Tertons from our region. Consequently, many great realized practitioners have emerged in the past, yet we have never even heard of some of them. Due to the karma of our past misdeeds, we are swept along by the winds of negative conditions. Bound by harmful habits, and our minds remain attached to this impure physical body, which is merely a temporary aggregation of the four elements. Even great siddhas must eventually depart from this world, let alone we ordinary beings, whose minds and bodies are far from reliable. It's as if an exquisite product made by a certified manufacturer is easy to break, not to mention the similar product made in a grandmother's garage without any quality control. As we cannot predict when or where this illusory body will perish, it is important that from this very moment onward, we should diligently engage in virtuous deeds and cultivate merit with body, speech, and mind. With this in mind, meditate on impermanence. A disciple of Gampopa was widely recognized as a great realized master in Tibet. Once, a practitioner from the Kham area heard of his fame and came to request teachings. However, the master did not give him any teachings. The practitioner did not give up and repeatedly pleaded, so the master grabbed the practitioner's hand and sincerely said, "I will die. You will die too. That's all my guru taught me. I guarantee you, no instruction is more supreme than this." Hearing this, the calm practitioner diligently practiced according to the instructions and eventually attained realization. If it were today and a guru told a person, "I will die, you will die too," that person might not be satisfied. He might think, "I'd already know this. You don't have to tell me." However, a faithful disciple can attain realization just through this instruction. In conclusion, we should read more history and learn about the past eminent masters. Then we should reflect, however vast these masters' Dharma activities were, they couldn't escape impermanence, let alone we ordinary people. I will certainly die, and the only thing that will be of help when I die will be the Dharma of liberation. Therefore, as of now, I must meditate on impermanence and diligently practice the Dharma that brings freedom.